Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 16. Jai and Vijay cursed by the sages. And we, I assume, are going to read verses 33, 34, and 35. And I assume 35 is on your sheets next. Is that correct? Okay, let me just read 33 and 34 first. Totugirvana rishabho dustara darilokata hatashriyo brahma shapad abutam vigatasmayo. But those two gatekeepers, the best of the demigods, their beauty and luster diminished by the curse of the Brahmins, became morose and fell from Vaikuntha, the abode of the Supreme Lord. Text 34. Tadavikunta dishanat tayor nipatamanayo hahakaro mahana asid vimana griyeshu putrika. Then, as Jai and Vijay fell from the Lord's abode, a great roar of disappointment arose from all the demigods, who were sitting in their splendid airplanes. And verse 35. Tav Eva Hi Aduna Praptao Parshad Pravarao Hare Diter Jatara Nirvishtam Kashyapam Teja Ulbanam Taveva Yaduna Prapto Parshada Pravarao Hare Ditir Jatara Nirvishtam Kashyapam Teja Ulbanam Taveva Yaduna Prapto Parshada Pravarao Hare Ditir Jatara Nirvishtam Kashyapam Teja Ulbanam Taveva Yaduna Prapto Parshada Pravaro Hare Ditir Jatara Nirvishtam Kashyapam Teja Ulbanam
Taveva Yaduna Prapto Parshada Pravaro Hare Dite Jatara Nirvishtam Kashyapam Teja Ulbanam
Taveva Yaduna Prapto
Taveva Yaduna Prapto
Parshada Pravaro Hare
Parshada Pravaro Hare
Ditir Jatara Nirvishtam
Ditir Jatara Nirvishtam
Kashyapam Teja Ulbanam
Kashyapam Teja Ulbanam. Matajis.
Taveva yaduna prapto. Parashada pravaro hare.
Ditir jatara nirvishtam. Kashyapam teja ulbanam. Taveva yaduna prapto. Parshada pravaro hare. Ditir jatara nirvishtam. Kashyapam teja ulbanam. Tao. Those two doorkeepers. Eva. Certainly. He addressed Aduna. Now. Prapta. Having gotten. Parshada pravara. Important associates. Hare. Of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dite. Of Diti. Jatara. Womb. Nirvishtam. Entering. Kashyapam. Of Kashyapa Muni. Teja. Semen. Ulbanam. Very strong. Translation. Lord Brahma continued, those two principal doorkeepers of the personality of Godhead have now entered the womb of Diti, the powerful semen of Kashyapa Muni having covered them. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Here is clear proof of how a living entity coming originally from Vaikuntha Loka is encaged in material elements. The living entity takes shelter within the semen of a father, which is injected within the womb of a mother, and with the help of the mother's emulsified ovum, the living entity grows a particular type of a body. In this connection, it is to be remembered that the mind of Kashyapa Muni was not in order when he conceived the two sons, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. Therefore, the semen he discharged was simultaneously extremely powerful and mixed with the quality of anger. It is to be concluded that while conceiving a child, one's mind must be very sober and devotional. For this purpose, the Garbhadan Samskara is recommended in the Vedic scriptures. If the mind of the father is not sober, the semen discharged will not be very good. Thus, the living entity, wrapped in the matter produced from the father and mother, will be demoniac, like Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. The conditions of conception are to be carefully studied. This is a very great science. The verse again. Taveva hyaduna prapto parshada pravaro hare diter jatara nirvishtam kashyapam teja ulbanam. Lord Brahma continued, those two principal doorkeepers of the personality of Godhead have now entered the womb of Diti, the powerful semen of Kashyapa Muni having covered them. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyatya Deshtarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna. Well, just see how in the Vedic scriptures, and particularly Srimad Bhagavatam, all sorts of different aspects of life are analyzed and presented clearly from the Krishna conscious perspective, maybe in a sort of religious context. One might perhaps not expect to hear information, particularly as Prabhupada gave in the purport. But it's all very important. These are just very significant and foundational parts of life within the material world and how to live successfully as far as possible within the material world. Just one interesting little point from the verse itself. Jai and Vijay in this verse 35, they are referred to as Parshada Pravaro. Parshada Pravaro. Parshada meaning associate, and Pravarao meaning, very, very important. Even sort of amongst the first, at least very important associates, hooray, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada translates in the verse, those two principal doorkeepers of the Personality of Godhead, Jai and Vijay. When you visit certain temples, quite a few, in India, you find that in front of the temple, just by the doorway actually, right by the doorway, are two figures carved like statues or whatever you call them, two figures generally with clubs. And this is Jai and Vijay. Yes, they are famous. They are principal doorkeepers, important associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So you find them, not everywhere, but in quite a number of places, you find Jai and Vijay are at the entrance of the temple. If I remember correctly, which I might not, but anyway, when we were at our ISKCON temple in Ekachakra, the birthplace of Lord Nityananda, as I recall, at the entranceway were Jai and Vijay. And just here and there you get this. So they're very important, like very celebrated associates of the Lord. They're called doorkeepers. They are Kshatriyas, they're warriors, because this is the service of a Kshatriya, to guard and take strong action where necessary. You know, unfortunately, of course, in this case, they took strong action, but it was ill-advised, and it's come to all of this now. But anyway, so in the purport, Srila Prabhupada discusses the sort of technical aspects of conception, which is an important part of Krishna consciousness. As Prabhupada says, the conditions of conception are to be carefully studied. This is a very great science. You know, obviously for people who are householders and desirous, like younger householders, say, and desirous of having nice Krishna-conscious children, well, this applies. This applies so much. And, you know, we have experience. Of course, we know so many Krishna-conscious families in many parts of the world. And sometimes you see that the child, or even sometimes you see if there are, say more than one child, say 2 children or even more, sometimes you see that the child or one of the children is very nicely natured, just by any standards, a sort of a gentle person, not an aggressive or that sort of person. Sometimes you see like that. But then sometimes you see the child is not like that. And sometimes even amongst devotee families, it may not be that common, but we've definitely seen sometimes the child or one of the children is sort of a wild child. Yeah. Being hyperactive is one thing, but being, just out of control and kind of verging on bizarre, or even actually bizarre, is definitely another thing. And as Prabhupada is explaining here, it's all a question of consciousness. Of course, ultimately, everything is a question of consciousness. And that's the sort of foundational fact underpinning everything in life in Krishna consciousness. But here we're talking specifically about this type of situation, that if parents want to have a nice child or nice children, then as Prabhupada says, the conditions of conception have to be carefully studied. And this particular point, perhaps in particular, at least it's certainly one of the very, very important aspects, that the consciousness of the father and the mother, of course, but in this case particularly the father's being emphasized, consciousness of the father has to be, as Prabhupada says, very sober and devotional, and the wife also. And in this way, this will encourage that a sober and devotional soul will be sent, because it's all going on under control. It's not just that things just happen, but a certain particular living entity is sent in terms of the consciousness of the father and of the mother. A certain type of quality of living entity is sent in accordance with the consciousness of the father and of the mother. So, of course, there's this idea, and it's so just almost totally prominent, but it's very prominent, that engaging in sex life is something exciting and, very pleasurable, and therefore it's sort of engaged in that state of mind or something of that sort. But for a devotee or for any intelligent person, it has to all be carried out in a very sort of particular way, a careful way. Because if not, then the child, of course, any child, generally the first however many years of their life, 20 or 25 or generally at the very least into the later teens, but it often goes on to 20 and 20 plus, the child is dependent on the parents and has to live with the parents, and the parents have to deal with the child. And any of you who have had children, and maybe good children or whatever children, you would know that the presence of a child or two in your life is very sort of defining on your life and kind of rules your life in many ways. Unless you're one of these people who wants to just hire some nanny from somewhere, and we would then say, good luck. But it can mean 20 years or even more, or it even can mean a lifetime of having to deal with this person who is just not, or at least very difficult. Do you follow the idea? Yeah, so, these things happen. There are extremely important considerations involved in conceiving a child, and then, of course, in bringing up a child. That's another thing. Bringing up a child, which is certainly best done by particularly the mother, but by both the parents, and not just simply with some employed person. So that's the idea here. Now, so Prabhupada makes the point, and if you've been following the story, you would know that at the time of, there's a whole story behind the conception. Some matters just immediately leading up to the conception. And Kasyapa Muni, as Prabhupada says, his mind was not in order. Yes. The conception took place at the wrong time, an inauspicious time, when, the living entities who are going to be sent into wombs, it depends, to some degree, it depends on the time of day. At that particular time, around sunset, dusk, just going into the evening, is the worst time, when the worst, you could say, candidates for being placed in the mother's womb, when the worst candidates are around. Yeah. So that was when the conception took place. And there was this whole extremely disturbed atmosphere between Kasyapa and his wife Diti. Very disturbed. Diti was just distraught, in extreme distress, just almost incapacitated by distress. Kasyapa found her on the floor, just immobilized by grief because she didn't have a child. And her sister, Aditi, did have children. So Kasyapa, she was in such a state. And for the husband, if the wife gets into some very extreme condition, it's very difficult even for a sober husband to remain sober and sort of, pacify. The tendency is to get caught up in it all. And that's what happened with Kasyapa. He got caught up. And he started speaking sort of very, not just questionable, but even wrong things, too extreme, trying to pacify his wife by, in some cases, flattering her. Flattery as such is generally not a very good idea. But in this case, it was just kind of bewildered flattery, attributing to her much greater importance and value than she was due. Just flattery. Just something made up, more or less, but not something real. And so he was in a disturbed state. His mind was not in order, and it was the wrong time, and her mind was just in a hopeless condition of bewilderment. So what sort of child would one expect from a conception under those circumstances? Well, as Prabhupada says here, thus the living entity, referring to just some living entity, not particularly Jai and Vijay. Thus the living entity wrapped in the matter produced from the father and mother will be demoniac, like Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. And the fact is that today there's a lot of little, fortunately very little, Hiranyakshas and Hiranyakashipus around Chatsworth. Anyway, just around the world, but also around Chatsworth and Durban and just around. That's the way it works. That's the way it works, and that is the way it has worked. Now, of course, there's another point that, as Prabhupada says, Kasyapa's mind was not in order. Normally it would have been better, at least somewhat better. Diti's mind was also not in order. So, therefore, at the time of conception, a husband and wife, as far as they're able, should try and get their minds in order. Prabhupada, in that regard, as we've heard, Prabhupada said that the couple, on the day of conception, should each chant 50 rounds of japa. I'm sure you've heard that. I don't know how many do, but anyway, let's not get into the Grihastha ashram too much. But that's what Prabhupada said. That is definitely what Prabhupada said. And I remember one devotee, some of you would know, Ajamil Prabhu, disciple of Prabhupada, from Australia, who was here for a little while we were raising funds for Radha Radhanath, 82. He was traveling with Madhavi Prabhu and I and Ramanuja. So Ajamil, nice, very sincere devotee, who has 2 sons. And I remember he just came up to me one day when the second son was around, just in the immediate vicinity, and he told me, Ajamil told me, that, he's a really nice boy. He is a really nice boy. And he said, he's a 50 rounder. That's what he told me. He's a 50 rounder. I don't know if that means the other one wasn't, but that one, he told me personally, he's a 50 rounder. And of course, on the other hand, it's not just a matter of just on the day, just making some special effort. Of course, it's a lot better than nothing. But the point ultimately would be that as devotees, we have to live in Krishna consciousness. Yes. We have to live in Krishna consciousness. And it's not just, like at the time of death, if someone has lived in any old way, but then they hear that at the time of death you must remember Krishna or chant Hare Krishna, and therefore if somehow there is some forewarning that death is coming today, and if they're conscious enough, then despite having lived in other ways, now on that day they can make just a special effort to remember Krishna and chant Hare Krishna, something like that. But actually, before that, they were not living in any sort of serious Krishna consciousness. That is, it's kind of like an attempt to cheat, or it's a type of foolishness to think that you can just mechanically force your mind at some particular time into a state of consciousness, like a good state of consciousness, just for the time being, whereas the rest of the time your consciousness is not right. That's not the way to do it. Krishna is not so stupid to be tricked like that, oh, look at this. Person's dying and he's chanting Hare Krishna. Oh, I must take him back to Godhead. Whereas the day before, he was living in a different way. Yeah, so actually the point ultimately is that a person, particularly a devotee, but just a person, must live in Krishna consciousness. And every day must be of the best quality possible. And this is, a very important part of the whole, you could say recipe, but the whole way in which when some crucial time, particularly the time of death comes, or a crucial time like this, conceiving a child, that everything will be in as auspicious and as Krishna conscious a condition as possible, and in a condition which will be as pleasing to Krishna as possible, and therefore Krishna will be inspired and happy to give special mercy. That is Krishna consciousness. That is actually Krishna consciousness. And that's what we as aspiring devotees really need to do. Now, Prabhupada here in the purport mentions the Garbhadan Samskar. It's Garbha meaning womb, and Dan meaning like a gift or donation. Yeah, the husband is giving a gift or a donation to the womb of the wife. That's what it means, literally. So, traditionally, going back into sort of more Vedic times, the husband and wife would take permission from the spiritual master. That happens today also, at least sometimes. But then they would inform all their friends and family members and people that on such and such a day, at such and such a time, we are going to conceive a child. And even people would, in some cases, gather and be there, chanting mantras, etc. That's quite something, isn't it? That's really quite something. But at the very least, we need to understand very clearly that Krishna consciousness is not just something which we do on a particular day if there's a particular need for mercy. Like sometimes mothers, on a number of occasions, mothers have told me, they're devotee mothers and they have children who are at school and are sort of devotees, but as many children of school age are, they're not really practicing on a regular basis, kind of caught up in the life of a child, although connected with Krishna consciousness. And these mothers have told me on a number of occasions that when the exams are coming, my child chants, 16 rounds a day. Yeah. My child really becomes very Krishna conscious. As soon as the exams are finished, it's back to how it was previously. So, Krishna makes the point in Bhagavad Gita that 4 types of Chaturveda bhajante mam, Jana Sukrita Norjana, Arto Jigyasur Artati, Jnani Cha Bharatarshava. 4 types of people may begin to render service to him. The distressed, the desire of wealth, the inquisitive, and those who are really seriously trying to understand the absolute truth. So the child in that situation is in the category of the distressed, or, not exactly wanting money, but wanting material success, somewhere in between or a combination of the first 2, the distressed and desire of wealth, or just a person who desires material facility and opportunity. Yes. Well, yena kena prakarena mana Krishna naveshayat. Rupa Goswami, or one of the 6 Goswamis, said that whatever it takes, if it takes this, if it takes that, whatever it takes, but think of Krishna. Whatever helps you think of Krishna, just do it, whatever it is. So therefore, if a child becomes stimulated to be more serious in Krishna consciousness because of exams, let the exams come. Yeah. Yes, but the point really is for us, for all of us to take away, not just the parents, but definitely for all of us, is that Krishna consciousness is an ongoing process. And ideally it should be an unbroken process, as Srila Rupa Goswami does say in Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Anyabilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavritam anukulyena Krishna nushilanam Bhakti Rutama. Different things need to be there in your Krishna conscious life if your Krishna consciousness is to be really pure Krishna consciousness. And certain things must not be there, but certain things must be there. So the things which must be there is anukulyena, we mentioned a little yesterday, favorability, in the sense that your attitude towards Krishna must be favorable, not a sort of resentful attitude, why do I have to do this service? There's so many others who could have done this service. Why didn't they ask him or her? Why me? a resentful state of anything other than a favorable state of consciousness where you're happy to have the opportunity to serve the Lord. And on the other hand, it must actually please the Lord. Even if you do some activity and as far as your mind is concerned, you think you're doing it for Krishna, you want Krishna to enjoy it, but if it's something which is not pleasing to Krishna, then that means your activity is not really devotional service. His Holiness Giriraj Swami, I remember very vividly from when he gave us a seminar on Nectar of Devotion. He gave an example of when he was enrolling life members in Mumbai many years ago. And he met one man, businessman, who was very nice and very favorable and happy to be helpful and donate and become a member. And he was just he had some sort of real attachment to Krishna. And as they were talking, a cup of tea came to the man. And so, no, he's got his cup of tea. So he pulled out, I think, some little special, little silver-type box, obviously something important and of values inside, and opened up and put in some teaspoons of the contents, which was tulsi leaves. And he said, yes, Krishna, oh, so nice. Whenever I have a cup of tea, I put tulsi leaves in, because tulsi is pleasing to Krishna. You heard Maharaj tell that story, yes. So it's not right, even though his attitude in one sense is actually very nice. But because he's doing something, drinking tea, plus putting tulsi, so sacred, into the rotten tea, it's just not right. It's just not right. So that's one thing. Favorability must be there in terms of favorable activity, a favorable attitude, and the activity must actually please Krishna. Then Krishna, it must be for Krishna. You can't do devotional service really for a demigod, and what to speak of your country or something like that. It's for Krishna, which includes his expansions and includes his devotees also. But then the next term in this regard is very important, anushilanam. Anushilanam means ongoing, not just momentarily or for some time and then there's just something which is not Krishna conscious. Anushilanam means ongoing and even unbroken. There's no interruption at all. This is really Krishna consciousness. So an attempt, like we mentioned, of parents wanting to conceive a child that if in general they're just in a kind of very mixed up type of consciousness, but then when the special occasion comes, oh, we must be Krishna conscious, it's also not going to really work. Certainly not going to work as would be truly desirable. Because a good child, a good Krishna conscious child, is such a great asset to the parents, such a great spiritual asset, and even can be a great material asset, a good child. But particularly, a good child like Dhruva Maharaj delivered his mother who was not exactly in a state of like real pure Krishna consciousness, although she was somewhat Krishna conscious, but by his mercy, by his influence, she went back to Godhead. Whereas if he had not done like that or been like that, who knows what really would have been her future. So a good Krishna conscious child is a great asset to the parents and a great pleasure to associate with and watch develop as a devotee. And that is like the success of Krishna conscious Grihastha life, and it's glorious. But other other children who are conceived in other states of mind, well, there's a saying I heard, little children, little problems. Big children, big problems. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki. Any comment or question? I mean, I shouldn't, as a sannyasi, I shouldn't be telling you things like that. It should be, anyway. But here we are. Okay, sorry. Yes?
You mentioned that when the parents are in good mental state, like in good order, then Krishna sends a devotional child
Yes.
to the family.
Yes.
For parents that are not devotees, but a child that later on in years takes to Krishna consciousness, is it the consciousness of the parents or is it the child's past consciousness?
It would more be just having had the child having had the good fortune of getting association with devotees. Yeah. Yeah, if the parents are not Krishna conscious or God conscious at all, if they're just materialists, then they're not going to be able to help the child generate like an attraction to Krishna consciousness. So generally for sure, if someone born in just a material situation, even a good one, but material, but then later the child becomes a devotee, generally the main thing by far is that they were fortunate to get the association of devotees, and that really stimulated their dormant Krishna consciousness and caused it to start coming forward. But good parents are better than bad parents. But some of our devotees are from good, materialistic, but good parents. But some are from materialistic, bad parents also. And some devotees were themselves bad before they somehow or other got some mercy and transformed. Some were really quite bad. Yeah. I don't know if you know of the one, I don't know what his status is right now, but from somewhere not far away, like around the sort of Chatsworth, Shallcross type area, he, as a young man, married, with I think at least one, but maybe two children, killed his wife and at least one, maybe two little children, like preschool children, killed them and got caught and sentenced to death at that time. But then the laws changed, so he got a life sentence and he became a devotee. Yeah. And I don't know what his status is now. You know who I'm referring to?
Teaching.
Huh?
He's got Carol. He's
Oh,
teaching.
really?
He's in Joburg.
Ah, Hare Krishna. Anyway, what to say? And he's a devotee?
Yes.
He's a devotee.
Even in prison he was learning.
Oh no, in prison he was into it. He was into it. He wanted to be initiated. I don't know if he got initiated.
He was fighting for Pratham.
He was, I don't know, yeah. Hare Krishna. Yes.
Swami, thank you for the class. My question is, if somebody is calling for Krishna at their time of departure, even though in a premeditated state, not a ongoing state, would that mean that Krishna will not accept him back to that?
It depends. You can't force Krishna. It's a bit unpredictable. But it'll definitely be beneficial. Yeah. Might as well do it. Don't say that, look, well, my life has been so hopeless, so what's the point? Just do it. And see what mercy Krishna gives. There's a possibility, it depends, like I said, but there's a possibility that Krishna would feel that let the person, they're making an effort at this last moment, but let them take birth in a nice devotee family so they can really become devotees. And then later, then he'll be more willing to accept them. But it depends. So, yeah, whatever the past was, if a person finds themselves in such a situation and knows, I should focus my mind on Krishna, and they do it, it will be good, at least it'll be very good for them. I heard one devotee told a story, the authenticity of which I don't know, but the story is that there was one man who was impious, but he heard that when the time of death comes, you must chant Hare Krishna on your beads. He didn't get beads, but somehow this sort of thought just stayed with him. And then the time of death came, or was coming. It was sort of, an hour or two away. And he remembered, wow, yeah. The devotee said, I must chant Hare Krishna on beads. So he told his wife, zip over to the temple, get me some beads. And as quickly as possible come back because I want to chant Hare Krishna on beads. So she went off to the temple and came back. And just as she came back with the beads, he died. So the scene then, according to the story, shifts to Yamaraj, the Lord of Death, and Chitragupta, his chief secretary. And Chitragupta, they're watching this whole thing happen. And Chitragupta says, okay, I guess he's, send the Yamadutas, send our men, and bring him here, and we'll, put him through the hoops. and Yamaraj says, no, he's liberated. And Chitragupta says, but, he didn't chant the names of the Lord. He almost did, but he didn't. And Yamaraj said, well, the thing is, he wanted to chant the holy names, so therefore he's liberated. I heard that story. Did you hear that story? Anyway, I'll tell you later from it. But it's a story from a sort of colorful person. Hare Krishna. But it wouldn't really apply to you because you're practicing Krishna consciousness. But if you have a relative or friend or someone who's like that, Anyway, just keep working on them, gently, but, persistently. And it does have an effect. You want to say something?
Yes.
Yeah?
You see, many cases, like we see, that the children become devotees,
Yeah.
and some of the transformation, the parents become.
Or the other way around.
Yeah.
It happens. I mean, all sorts of different things happen. One devotee was telling us from Europe, even maybe Russia, but somewhere up in that sort of Eastern Europe area, that he was a devotee and living at home and chanting and doing everything. But his father was just not nice, like, sarcastic and just regularly saying negative things. Then after a while, this went on for a few years. After a while, he noticed his father was just more peaceful and wasn't making remarks. And, nothing positive, but nothing negative. And one day, so this devotee was working, one day he came home early and entered the house somehow quietly. And he came into the sitting room. There was his father chanting japa. And the devotee was shocked. He didn't know about it. He said, "What happened to you?" And the father said, "Yeah, well, I was watching you and how you changed, and I read some of the books, and I just felt I have to do it myself. But I was feeling too embarrassed to tell you that I'm practicing." So all sorts of things happen. This is not exactly directly related, but it's kind of funny and interesting in Krishna consciousness. In a place called Dushanbe, I think it's Azerbaijan is the country. Anyway, it's one of those countries there that used to be part of the Soviet Union. The whole family is devotees. Mum is just full-scale devotee, and the children also. But one of the boys, who's a devotee, like young man, mid-20s, suddenly got some serious illness, extremely serious. And the doctor came. He's like totally incapacitated. At least he couldn't stand up. Doctor came and said, 2 weeks. 2 weeks. That's all. He's going to die. So the mother came and told the mother that, didn't tell him. The mother came in. She's just, full-on devotee, and said, "Good news." Good news. You're going to die in 2 weeks. And he said, "Yeah, great. Give me my beads. Turn on, a recording of Prabhupada. Where's the Bhagavad Gita?" Right. So 2 weeks passed, and, it was all like that. But he didn't die. And in fact, he suddenly started recovering. And the doctor said, "Wow, it's a miracle. He's going to be okay." And the mother came in, told the mother. The mother came in and said, "Bad news." What a disappointment. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki.